Well, good morning. This is Christine Hart-Savage, and you're listening to Mind, Body, Heart and Soul. Hello, Pete. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Christine.
Here with Dr. Peter Johnson, who's back from sunny wherever you go. You go up north somewhere all the time,
it's usually up Ballina, Lennox Head area, but it's... we had 2 warm weekends there, middle of winter, which is a nice change. It's been raining most of the time I go up there recently.
It doesn't get terribly cold up there, though, does it?
But it's not quite as nippy as down here, no. No, I felt the Melbourne winter the last couple of days.
Well, I think at the moment it's the mornings and the evenings from about 4:30, 5 o'clock, but the days have been pretty good lately. Yeah. Not that you would know that because you're up there sunbaking on weekends. They've been working up there. Yeah. A lot of tripping around you're doing.
Look, it is. It's a funny sort of way, really, and because I cover the other people's work, it's not always in the times that may suit me either. But it's quite nice to have a bit of variety.
You'll need your own plane soon.
Yeah, I don't think I earn that much.
Because you're flying up there so much.
Yeah.
Now, today we're discussing mindfulness, the buzzword. Yeah. Well, it's just sort of one of those things that even in the conventional medical system's looking at it quite seriously. Definitely. There's mindful programs everywhere.
Yeah.
Psychologists.
It is.
Yeah.
And I must admit, looking at this, a lot of research been done in the last 4 or 5 years on the subject too. So there is a bit around. And I used to get a little bit confused about it because it's come in, and a lot of the research that they talk about for mindfulness was research done on meditation.
I think for that confusion, perhaps you could start to practice some mindfulness.
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably a good word in a way, because I used to associate meditation with peace and relaxation, and which for me was more often than not going to sleep. Some of what I thought were my best meditations were I was snoring. And disturbing the other people in the group. And I think I remember one of Deepak Chopra's statements about meditation, that meditation is about tuning in, not tuning out.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's got a bit closer to the word mindfulness, which is really more about being aware and awake and alert. And to me, I think a word that I associate with mindfulness is being in the present, being here now.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. But it's also about being peaceful, but it's certainly about being absolutely here and now and alert within that, so that you're very present in every way of yourself and what's going on around you. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to practice, actually, mindfulness.
I think so, and I think sometimes we get a bit mixed up a bit too because of the formal practice of it. I found it, what was more helpful to me in a way was realising what isn't mindful. Things like forgetting that you've got your specs on, don't know where I've left my keys, listening to somebody and having not the foggiest idea what the hell they're talking about because I'm somewhere else.
Been listening.
I haven't been thinking about the game at the MCG instead of what they're talking about. And these are all sort of good reminders of mindlessness, if we might say, when our mind isn't in the present.
And that's most of the time for most of us, really, isn't it? And we're really missing life when we're not present.
Yeah.
We're just living in some past memory within ourselves, and we're responding to that past memory rather than being present to what is actually happening around us.
No, that's right. And I think somebody did a survey, I've forgotten where it was, and got about a few thousand people to answer a question of when are they happiest, when they're having these dreams and ideas of what might lie ahead, or when they're actually just focused on what they're doing, or whether it's, other thoughts that are just drifting in autopilot. But the bulk of the people came out with being in the present and focused on what they're doing is actually more enjoyable than even these castles in the sky that you're building in your dream time.
I think when you are present, you end up being happier. That's what's happened for me. There's more peace inside when you are really present, because you're not going off to past things or worries that are concerning, that build up stress and anxiety inside. So being present, when you're really present, I mean, you're just here now. Life is this moment, and in this moment, everything is perfect.
You also tend to be focused entirely on either what you're doing or the person you're with, which tends to get you out of your ego
neurosis,
your ruminations about the past and the future, or the worries about the future and the problems in the past and what you did wrong and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So it does.
It is a neurosis, isn't it?
Yeah, it is in a way.
Most of us are neurotic. We're all mad.
And of course, the more you've got a real issue in your mind, the harder it is to stay in the present, because you keep drifting back to it. It can take you out of almost anything you're doing, and
a big attachment or a dominant thought. Oh yeah. And with that, a great big emotional charge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You can't be present, can you?
No.
It takes a lot of practice.
And I think that's probably why the idea of practicing mindfulness comes in, because it's when the shit hits the fan, so to speak. And
Here you go again, Dr. Pete, to clean up your language. When the manure hits the mistral.
It's a little bit harder to get into that stay in the present in a crisis if you haven't actually practiced it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You've got no hope. So it's the daily practice that's important. Well, when I looked on the internet around some of mindfulness, some of the terms or the forms of mindfulness blew me away. There's 10 that they talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Mindfulness of the Buddha. So that'll be mindfulness of the spirit within, mindfulness of the Dharma, mindfulness, and I don't know what this word is, mindfulness of the Samgar, mindfulness of giving, mindfulness of the heavens, mindfulness of stopping and resting. I think that's important. Mindfulness of discipline, mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of the body, and mindfulness of death. It's the last one. So it had to be the last one, didn't it?
Well, that's right. This sounds very much Buddhist, Eastern philosophy. Because they go into training for death about those things, don't they?
Yeah. And
your thoughts, right?
And that's interesting too. I didn't actually research about the mindfulness on death, but that's quite an interesting one, because we tend to ignore death in the Western world. We don't talk about it with our families. I mean, one day we are not going to be here, and that's that, in this body. And I think mindfulness of that is very important too. So that's not something that I've actually practiced or studied. What about you?
Look, I haven't studied it greatly. I certainly did read the Tibetan Book of the Dead years ago. And,
me too.
And some of the Egyptian ones were quite good too. The Egyptians had a Book of the Dead about their way of... they again believed that life continued on, and I think they used to have these symbols of weighing the heart against a feather. So obviously the lighter the heart and the more happy and the more outgoing you were in your lifetime, the lighter your heart got and the better it could float up, according to the Egyptian ways.
Surely that's symbolic.
Very much, very much. And a lot of their stuff is all symbolic.
Yeah,
exactly.
Symbolic.
Yeah. But the principles are along the same lines.
Yeah, and I suppose really that's about ascension. It's about raising ourselves to that higher level of consciousness, which is really what mindfulness at its essence is about.
Yeah, that's right.
It's about unfolding whatever is trapped inside and becoming aware or present of it so it can move through and out of you, which allows you to become more of who you are, which means that you are lighter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so hence the feather.
Yep. And I think on that subject, incidentally, of symbolic gestures, I remember looking at the history of art, and they went back to Egyptian hieroglyphs but their stylized type of art, and then compared it unfavourably with the Renaissance art, where you had three-dimensional subjects very well. But what was often misunderstood was that the Egyptian art was a very clear symbolic type of art.
Yes.
And that it wasn't meant to be a depiction of people. Often they'd have 6 fingers on one hand or 4 on another hand. And to the Egyptians, the right hand was for giving and the left one for receiving. So if you had 2 left hands, you're obviously a receiver in a hieroglyph. And